Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I really want to thank you for being here and for the love that you have shown me over the years and the support that you've given me. I just want to let you know I really do care and I appreciate this. I know some of you are new and probably have never heard of anything that we've done, but you will. It's what we're about to present is something brand new. We've presented it in Seattle once before, and we talked about it in a couple Earth-Sky workshops, but really this is the first time that we are going to be giving this out to the world. And it's a great message, I think. I think you will see this as it unfolds. In La'ish. In La'ish means you are another me. And this is how the Mayans greeted each other, and they literally saw each person that came up to them as not just an extension, which is a kind of a one way of looking at it. It's more than an extension. They actually saw the spirit in the other person as them. And my life is based on that. Whenever I look into the eyes of anyone else, I see the Christ within them. And so everything I'm going to be saying today will be coming from that place. Because this is the great secret. This is how the Mayans, by the way, they all disappeared on a single day. Couple million Mayans just disappeared. No bones, no bodies, no nothing, just gone. And it's because they understood the unity of life. And we are about to do the same thing on a worldwide level. We're about to transmute into a whole new way of existing, and I'm really honored to be here on this planet at this time, because this is a big one. This is a really big one. I'm going to be very very precise, you might say, today, because we're being filmed, and also because the time constraints are limited in the amount of time. When we first did this, or we planned this a year ago, we had a certain idea, and since then everything's been thrown out. We had to start all over again, and even since the last time we gave the presentation, it's changed. And so it's okay. This is the way it is. So to begin, I'm going to have a sip of water. Water's going to be a big key in all this eventually. So I'm going to just sort of step into this. There's going to be 5 phenomena that we're going to talk about. 5 entirely, seemingly different things that are going on. There's a couple more that I'll mention at the end of this. I'm not bringing them up because they can't be proven at all right now, whether they're real or not. Eventually, I believe they will come out as being real, but we'll just sort of leave them toward the end. But these 5, once you see them, they do something. They begin to you begin to see in a whole new way. The first 2 of these you already know. You know them inside and out, you think. And but these 2 have been hidden. The worlds have made sure that you don't know what they are. The third one is one that is just emerging on the world right now, and there's great controversy over it, but we'll present it, and I believe it's true, and that's why I'm presenting it. The fourth one, hardly anyone knows about at all. A few people, almost no one, a few Flower of Life people probably, but most of the world is not aware of it, but they're about to be. And the fifth one has to do with the children, which will be given this afternoon. So to begin with this sequence, there's going to be a slide presentation here for a little bit, and I'm going to first talk about the history of the Flower of Life very quickly, and it's not going to be a long, drawn-out thing. We're talking about like 10 minutes here, and just about, I think, 8 slides or 9 slides. And I'm doing this because the background needs to be laid down. I'm sure that there are people in the audience that have no idea what the Flower of Life is or what that information was. And the context of that is important relative to what we're about to talk about. And also the people who will be seeing this video, there's bound to be many of those that have no idea about this at all. So we're going to start in there. And since late 84, early 85 until the middle of 1994, for almost 10 years, a presentation was given around the world called The Flower of Life, which is this workshop that was given. It was given orally, so we didn't publish out anything. It was only given orally. And then at one point, this workshop was turned over to facilitators, other people who were trained to give this, and they went out to the world. There's somewhere around 300 facilitators in the world, and they're in at least, the last count, about 33 countries. And it's continuing to grow, probably because there's something real here. And usually, if it isn't, people don't look at it after a while. And for a long time, I said I was going to put this into a book, which took 5 years. A little slow, but I was very busy. And that has finally happened. This is the cover of the new book that just came out about 3 months ago, called The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. And it's volume 1, and it is just the beginning. It's about just a little less than half of the information. And the real important information is not in there yet. It's being timed on volume 2, which will come out right before the end of this year, right before the year 2000. Everything is timing in this world. And so that should come out. It won't take 5 years this time, I don't think. And now what this information is around, what it's all about. Why is it any different than any other information? Why do people care about this? It's because many years ago, we discovered something in Egypt on one of the oldest walls in Egypt. In fact, one of the oldest walls in the world in our civilization. This wall is about roughly 6,000 years old, and there was burned into this wall was an etching of a design, you might say. And this design looked like this. And as this design unfolded in my life, I began to understand what the name was that was given to it by many of the ancient races around the world. And most of them called it the Flower of Life. We first found this in Egypt, but since then we found it, I think after that was in England and in Ireland, and then in Israel, and then in Greece, then in Turkey, and in Switzerland, and in Iceland, and in Japan, in China, in Tibet. Recently we've even found it in the Yucatan and Chichen Itza from the Mayans. It was pretty well dispersed all over the world, and there's about, I don't know, another 8 or 9 places I'm not saying right now. And so why was this same design so important to the ancient peoples all over the world? At least that was the question I asked myself. And I spent a long time decoding what this meant. With the help of the angelic realms, and certain other people and teachers and beings from around the world to help me to understand what this really was. And the final bottom line of it is what the ancients believed was this was the absolute key to the entire creation, that there was absolutely nothing in existence, no word you can say, no concept or thought that you could put out, or even a feeling, that isn't entirely and completely identified within here. Every law of physics, every structural pattern known in the universe, every single thing, including biological life forms and the very shape of them and the color of their eyes and how they're formed, everything, it's all in there, and you can prove it. It's not just Maybe it's in there. It's absolutely in there. And what unfolded from all of this was something that's now being called sacred geometry. All of sacred geometry and all levels of existence of sacred geometry are contained totally within that one image right now. And sacred geometry is the underlying forms and patterns and proportions that everything is created through. The interesting thing about it is that you, as a human being, have that pattern around you. From, if you were to look above or from below you, you have a spherical one of these located directly around you in an electromagnetic field. This magnetic field, electromagnetic field is contained primarily in the microwave range and sits at about 4 degrees Kelvin, which is about 4 degrees above absolute zero. You can scientifically prove it's there if you have the correct instruments. But in that outer field of the flower of life, three-dimensionally, so each one of those are not circles but spheres, there are many, many, many shapes and forms that are contained within there, which contain within them all the levels of consciousness in existence. So you are a seed that contains all possibilities without exception. I was recently in the Yucatan with a Mayan shaman named Hunzbatsman doing ceremony, and while we were there was a man that you do know more, Edgar Mitchell, who was one of the astronauts who landed on the moon, and he was talking about the new science that is emerging in NASA. And as some of you may know, the relativity as presented out by Einstein and the quantum physics, quantum mechanics that emerged later in that never really fit together. There were many little points and places that were incongruent. And the search for the unified field theory has been going on for years and years and years. Many people claiming they found it. But NASA is now claiming they have found it. And Edgar said that to try to understand what has happened over the last few years is almost impossible by normal human ways of looking at things. That we have evolved very, very quickly over the last 5 years. He said that in the last 5 years, NASA has learned as much as entire civilization of the planet has learned in the last 6,000 years. And that they have learned as much in the last 6 months as they've learned in the last 5 years. And that was about 7 months ago, so who knows where they are now. It's a straight up curve. And what they have found is that the human body is a holographic image of the entire creation of the universe. And that we live in a hologram. We literally live in a hologram. That any object, whether it's a beer can or a car or our human body, is a piece of this hologram that the universe is, and that just as in a hologram, if you take a photograph of a hologram and you rip off a little piece of it, it contains the image of the whole thing, even though you just ripped off a little piece of it. Well, your body, your physical body, is the same way. You are a hologram of everything. The location of Sirius and the entire star pattern out in space and everything that's out there can be determined from your body. And not only outer space and the depths of the macrocosm, but the same way on the microcosm going in. All of that is all contained within you, within your physical body. Your physical body contains this. And not only does it do that, but there's a reverse of it. Your physical body may be sitting in this room, but NASA says that it can be located anywhere in space or time. That you exist everywhere at once through time and space at the same moment. That's hard to imagine, but this is how the new science is perceiving the reality that we live in. And how can that be? Well, it becomes pretty clear if you study the sacred geometry located in this one little image how this can be. But to give you a direct example, because I really do believe in demonstrating things directly. This is a drawing by Leonardo da Vinci. And as you all know, the drawing part of it anyway. And by the way, Leonardo was totally involved in the Flower of Life. He was drawing the Flower of Life. He was drawing all the aspects of it. And this is how he was able to create the inventions, such as the helicopter and all these kinds of things, so long ago, because he understood the basic creation pattern. And anybody who understands this suddenly jumps from normal to genius immediately, because all things come into focus. There is no separation between any subject. You can take music or art or science or language or feelings or anything else, and they're all integrated through the same image pattern and the same dynamic proportions of sacred geometry. Here, Leonardo shows that if you put your hands straight out like this and your feet together, that there's a square that fits around your body. Science has shown that that square, if you measure this many people in the room, the difference between the height of your body and the width of your arms is only 1/10,000th of an inch. And that 1/10,000th of an inch is not an error. It is associated with the sequence, the mathematical sequence that forms it, which is the Fibonacci sequence. And that's another subject, but it is talked about in the book. And if you put your arms up like this, with your arms out like that, there's a sphere or a circle that will fit around your body with the exact center at your navel. The square will be centered at the base of your spine. And if you move that sphere that's centered at the navel, the center of the sphere down to the center of there, it forms a relationship that forms something called the golden mean ratio, which is the basis of all life everywhere. And by pure chance, you might say, some people would say it in this way, if you drew a circle inside this square, which is this blue area, and you drew a circle on another circle up here that is centered directly on the sphere that goes around the body, that the size of that sphere there, the gold one and the blue one, happen to be mathematically perfect to the size of the Earth and the Moon. It isn't off at all. There was a man named Kepler who thought that perhaps the planets all orbit in a certain way which is related to the 5 platonic solids, which all come out of the Flower of Life. And he tried to show how the orbits were not at random, but that they were set there very precisely according to these geometries. But he was wrong only because he didn't have correct information. In those days, they didn't really know exactly where the planets are. Now we know really where they are, and we know their maximum orbit, their minimum orbit, and their mean orbit. And there was a man named John Martineau who wrote a book called A Book of Coincidences, just pure coincidence, that shows that all of the orbits of all the planets and their relationship to the sun and the relationships of the orbits to each other, such as the relationship of the Earth's orbit to Venus, etc., or Mars to Uranus, etc., were all based on sacred geometry. Very, very precise sacred geometry with an accuracy that's incredible, that's undeniable. An accuracy that falls primarily in the range of about 99.9% perfect. It's not an accident. It can't be. And all of it's sacred geometry, and all of it is found in the Flower of Life, and all of those proportions of all the size of the planets and where they're located and moving around in the solar system can all be identified in and around your body, in the orbital fields that are around your body. NASA is already beginning to understand this now. And just a little side thing, if you notice the line that runs through the center of the Earth or the center of the body, and the line that runs up to the center of the Moon and comes down, and a line that goes from the center of the Moon to the center of the Earth, that shape, by a pure coincidence, just happens to be the exact shape of the Great Pyramid. That angle right there is 51 degrees, 51 minutes, 24 seconds. It's the precise shape of the Great Pyramid. And if you read Hermes, who wrote the Emerald Tablets, he says in there that the pyramid was created from the proportions of the Earth. This proves it. Not only is the macrocosm in and around your body, but so is the microcosm. And this is what NASA has also discovered. There is something in mitosis called the 8-cell division. It goes from 1 cell division to 2 to 4 to 8. And when it hits 8 cells, it forms a pattern that looks like this. A little star tetrahedron. It's like a cube if you see it from this way, but if you turn it up on the edge, it's called a star tetrahedron. And this little pattern, the 8 cells are lined up on each one of these points of this little pattern, which comes directly out of the flower of life. And those 8 cells, when you look at it in a cube pattern, is right here. There's one of them, there's 2, 3, 4, and there's another set of them behind there, forming an exact pattern showing that the human body is actually defined in the original 8 cells when you were something so small you can't even see. And it's still there right now. And this is just one indication, though you could go on for hours if you wanted to, showing how the microcosm, the small stuff, is completely located within you. And these 8 cells, by the way, are true with all life forms known in existence, which includes, though we don't have scientific proof of it, of all the ETs that are out there also. It's all based on the same principles, no matter where they came from or who they are, or where they are on the earth, whether it's a tree or a dog or a cat or a human being. It's all, the 8-cell division is the same. It's exactly the same. And through time, as studying this over many, many, many years, we began to discover that this star tetrahedral field that the original 8 cells were located in is also around the body in an electromagnetic field. And it sits precisely in the arrangement that's around here, exactly 1 hand length above the head, exactly 1 hand length below the feet. And there is this interlocking field of these patterns around there. And connecting from the bottom, running through the very center, right, entering in at the perineum between the legs, going up through the center of the body, exiting at the crown chakra, and connecting to it at the top, is a tube of energy that for each person is different, but if you take your thumb and your middle finger and put them together, that's how big around your tube is. And that tube has these little crystalline patterns that connect at the top and the bottom. And this allows access to life force energy, or prana, or chi, or ether, or tachyon energy, all the same thing. If it is accessed in a certain way. And there is a breathing pattern that the ancients knew, that and which requires certain thoughts and certain feelings that begin this field here spinning. And there's actually 3 of them there, and there begins to be a counter-rotating field of spinning motion that begins to spin around your body that forms something that the ancients called the Merkaba. And if you were and it looks basically like a flying saucer. There's a disc that comes out, and it's about 55 feet in diameter, depending on your height. And the whole energy field of all of your bodies are all contained within this 55-foot field, with the exception of some other little thing I can't get into right now. Too complex. And so I want you to remember, if you could, this breathing tube that runs through the body. It's absolutely straight. It's just like a fluorescent tube. There's very few people or religions in the world who remember this. The Tibetans do. Tibetans, Buddhists know exactly what I'm talking about, and they use this in their final steps of their initiation. This field of energy, if you were to look at it, happens to be identical to the infrared heat envelope around galactic bodies. This is the Sombrero Galaxy, and this is a disk that moves through. You can't see it real well on here, but if you were to look at it, it looks just like the traditional flying saucer. And the galaxy is also a living being that is alive, just like you and me. It has a very high level of consciousness. It has a completely integrated cellular level, which we call like humans or ETs, who are all working together in a single body. It's not Star Wars like we think. It's very much more like your own body, where where the brain cells and the heart cells and the different kinds of appearing bodies are actually functioning together in a larger system for the greater good of all. And we have exactly the same shape around us if we breathe in a certain way. And the Merkaba is a vehicle. It's a vehicle that you use to get here in this planet, and when you die, it'll be the same vehicle that you use to get to wherever you're going after that. And it is a vehicle. And in the Torah, in the Israeli way of seeing things, the Merkaba was pronounced Merkava, and when you translate Merkava into English, it means the chariot or a vehicle. It's much more than a vehicle. That's one of its aspects. It literally can become anything in existence. But that's another subject that we can't put forth here right now. Now, and that's the basic information that came out through the Flower of Life. Though the information that's going to be presented here today will also be in Volume 2 of the Ancient Secret, the Flower of Life. And this is where we left everybody. We left them, we told them how to create it. We didn't say what it was or what to do with it. And that was what the workshop called the Earth Sky Workshop, which we've been doing for the last 3 years, is the information of what to do once you've now established this field around you, how to create it and what it can do and what it means for human life. Right up here is a little flying saucer, a craft. These are pictures from Billy Myers out of Switzerland, I think it is. Yes. And they are, most of us, as we have evolved over this thing with flying saucers and UFOs, there has been so much written about this. There has been so much said about it, and a lot of it's pretty outrageous. A lot of it's probably not true. A lot of it is true, but being veiled. And it's hard to know what is the truth anymore. The governments have definitely veiled this one from us. But there's something that took place a long time ago in the very, very, very beginning of this phenomena that was recorded. And the recording of this is important, though it has at this point been almost completely lost. You see, there were, in the very, very beginning of UFOs, as modern day ones, I'm not talking about ones that happened perhaps hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago, but in this century, relative to the massive outbreaks of sightings, happened almost on a single day. It wasn't something that slowly spreadered in. It went wham, like that, bam, they were there. And it happened in Europe in 1946. In the summer of 1946, suddenly everybody in Europe was seeing these UFOs. Nowhere else in the world. The following summer, in the summer of 1947, in the United States, in a single day, bam, they were all over the United States. And the Air Force set up an investigation. It was called Project Sign, S-I-G-N. And it's interesting because they really didn't know who was doing this. They went through a lot of convulsions, basically, trying to figure it out. Originally, they thought it was the Russians. They said, those Russians got a hold of the German stuff, and now they're doing this thing. And they did extensive research to find out if the Russians were really doing this, and they finally came up with the conclusion, well, it's not the Russians. Then they the project turned in on themselves and said, it's probably us. We're doing this. We're secretly doing this. And they did extensive research to find out if there was any kind of secret programs going on around this, and came up with the conclusion, it's not us, it's not them. There is nobody else. Who in the heck is doing this? Well, it went from Project Sign to Project Grudge to Project Blue Book over a few years. And the head of Project Grudge and the head of Project Blue Book, a man named Captain Edward Ruppelt, you can see it down here, Ruppelt, R-U-P-P-E-L-T, who witnessed all of this stuff in the beginning days, wrote a book when he got out of the Air Force. He put it all down in this called the Report on the Unidentified Flying Objects. He wrote it all down. He wrote down everything that happened, the name and address of every person involved, their rank, where it was, how it happened, what they felt when they were going through these things, and the original experience of all of this. And the whole thing about, you know, the thing where they were saying they were weather balloons and things like this. Well, many of them were weather balloons. I believe it was Motorola, I can't remember for sure, who had this called the Skyhook Project, and they had these giant weather balloons that were huge, and they were silver, and when they were in the sky they were really bright, and they would get up into the jet streams and move at 300 miles an hour, and they would look like flying saucers or UFOs. But they mapped every one of those things. They knew exactly where they were, and so they could tell if somebody was seeing one of those or something else. And so he describes what they went through, how they did everything. They even had their pilots say, you know, they could say, well, it was a reflection on their cockpit. It was what it was. So they had them tilt their planes to see if that's what it was. They had everything imaginable that they could think of, just like investigating a murder, on who was doing this. And it's real obvious when you read this that that he was being sincere in putting this out. It's interesting. Soon after he wrote this, he died at 39 years old and disappeared because they didn't want this out, and that book just disappeared. No one talks about it anymore. But it's still available out there if you look, if you find for it. There's still a few copies running around. And the first thing that's so important to realize, in the original sightings from 1946 through 1952, which is when he actually quit this in here, the first 5 years of all of this in here, all the sightings, almost without exception, were over military bases. All over the world. They weren't from you and I. They weren't from cities or, you know, hippies sitting on a corner saying, there goes one. This was from very special people. I mean, they were people who had high credentials and PhDs and everything else who worked for the military. They were pilots with F-16s and F-18s, hundreds of them. There were 44,000 sightings in the United States alone in those 5 years. 44,000 sightings, according to this book. And they only received to this project, of the Project Blue Book, a little over 10%, about 4,400 of them. And they investigated those sightings like crazy. And if there was anything in one of a sighting that could possibly be a mistake, maybe it was a weather balloon, or maybe it was a reflection, or maybe it was an asteroid, or maybe it was just another plane or something else like that, they threw it out. If it was even the remote chance that it was wrong, but they still came up with just slightly under 800 sightings that there was absolutely no doubt whatsoever that these things were true UFOs. These were sightings with F-18 airplane falling right behind them, with people watching them in there, with people on the ground watching them go by, and with the radars tracking them at the same time. And so it's real clear, if you get this original writing, that this was not some phony baloney thing that was going on. This was a very real phenomenon. And all the kinds of things that we hear nowadays, the kinds of stuff where, like, you see them going really fast and making a 90-degree turn and disappearing, and all these kinds of things, they're all written up in this book here. They all witnessed this right in the very beginning. They identified all the shapes that we're used to. The flying saucer shape, which was the main one, the long cigar shape, the delta wing ones, triangular shaped ships. They were all identified there. They even talked about how and all fully recorded through the Air Force, where an F-16 or F-18 would be following one of these things, and they would lock on with their radar, and the moment they did, the thing would shoot ahead at an unbelievable speed, and just 10 miles ahead, instantly, like this. And then it would let it catch up with them again. But the moment it locked on radar, shoot ahead. But they witnessed things that were impossible. The ship would disappear and reappear directly behind the F-16. They'd just gone, and then it'd be right behind them. And this was talked about in the beginning, in the first 5 years, before any of this stuff emerged out in the world. And the most interesting one, which they talk about in here, is the spheres of light. Two kinds. These big balls of burning light that are look like they're on fire, which we're still seeing in the world, all over the world. And these balls of light that are moving around, usually in sets of 3 or 4. And the spheres of light, which are these translucent, brilliant lights. And I've seen these myself. And that are usually only about this big, they can be about this big to maybe this big, that they have tracked with, they've photographed, they've done everything else with them, but they had no idea what they were. It didn't fit into anything. The end result of this book, after 5 years and after he just published this thing, and at that time it was too early for the governments to realize that you can't do these things. The end result is that he believes that there's only one answer left, because they have checked every known possibility in existence on this planet, and the only answer left is that they're from another planet. He didn't have the concepts or ideas of other dimensions and other levels of existence on those ways. So his own thing is that they had to be interplanetary. And so I believe, and I think if you read this book, you'll believe it too, that they're here. They really are here. The answer is why. And I think you might find the real reason that brought them in had to do with World War II. Had to do with something we call the atomic bomb. And when we exploded that bomb, first time, we broke galactic law. You are not to do fission reactions, but only fusion reactions. Fission is splitting matter apart. Fusion is putting it together. All the stars in the sky are fusion, of bringing matter together. And fission is against galactic law. And that's why they came here, initially. That's what brought them. And it's not just 1 or 2, by the way. It's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cultures that are here, observing us on many levels and watching what we're doing and interacting with us on all kinds of levels. But I'm not going to go into it that deeper. There's a lot more of it in the book itself in terms of the grays and the abductions and cattle mutilation and all the various other kinds of things that have been going on. But I just want to put this out to say that I believe this is really a real situation, not a fantasy one. And we need to look at this one in conjunction with the other 4, that you begin to see that a higher consciousness is here on Earth. A very high consciousness is here on Earth. And our lives are going to be altered forever. And that is occurring at this very minute as we sit in this room. And this is that slide I wanted to show you, I think. You see these other ships of Billy Myers, especially this one here. Look at the shape of this, that dome-shaped thing that comes like that. Well, the kings of England were buried in chambers that look like this. And they were buried right in the center where the cockpit would be, sort of. There's another one back up sitting over there. They look like ships that have landed on the ground. Now, where do you think they got that image? Maybe they saw it. Just maybe. I'm using this image also because the next one that the next phenomena I want to talk about, well, first of all, one second. That last phenomena is now 52 years old. Just to finish this last one up, the UFOs. They've been here for 52 years. And the sightings are not dropping, but they are increasing more and more and more. In fact, there was even a thing, I believe it was on ABC recently, remarking about the worldwide sightings are increasing, not dropping. And so that's been around for 52 years. This next one I want to talk about has been around for 27 years. And this has to do with the crop circles. And this is in England. Now, these ones I'm about to show you are 1998's. They're last year's crop circles. There are other ones besides these ones, but I'm just going to give you a few examples of them. And this is another thing that the governments of the world said, it's Doug and Dave. They're out there. They're out there making these things, drinking their beer and having a good old time. And I don't know, guys. There are a lot of fakes. There's no doubt about it. They have caught people making these things, and there are fakes that are out there. But what you got to know is that it is absolutely scientifically easy to prove a real crop circle from a fake. All you have to do is read the book of Colin Andrews, The Undeniable Evidence. In the book, The Undeniable Evidence by Colin Andrews, they have proof, because what happens is a true crop circle, and this is a true one here, they are not pushed down or stepped on or laid in place. They are grown in place. The crops themselves grow into that circle. Nobody does it. And there's a little 45-degree angle on the crops that they have analyzed, which is a biological unique situation that no one has ever seen before. And they always have these little 45-degree, like a little knot that goes on there. The crops are still alive. They're not dead. If you take a living crop circle, it will stay that way just until the crops actually do die. Whereas if it's a fake one, after a few days everything turns brown and it dies. Of course, when you get everybody in there walking all over them, they start killing it. You know, especially if you get hundreds and hundreds of people like they sometimes do. But initially it's very clear. And the precision of these things is amazing. I mean, they're within just like almost perfect circles. They're not sort of round or kind of round. They're really round. And they've also, if you go into directly into them, which it's hard to, this one was not this way, but it was the only slide. I was there in this one here, and this was an interesting one. But this slide doesn't actually show this, but in many of them you'll see that the crops are woven. They're woven like a hair braid. And you'll find, and I've found as many as 5 layers of weaving, where it goes weaving one way, then the other way, then the other way, then the other way, then the other way. And there's this amazing pattern. When you consider that every crop circle ever found in the world was created between sunset and sunrise, always at night, and always during that time, the complexity of the crop circles are right now that it would take an army of people to be able to create these patterns in the world. When you look at these things, they are extremely complex, and each one of these circles is whirling around in a different way. And you can go in there with compasses, and you go into one, and the compass will wildly spin in one direction. You step over on the other side, and it wildly spins in the other direction. What's doing that? They found crop circles are highly radioactive, too. They found crop circles with powder in them. They don't even know what the heck it is. They've never seen it before. And that's a person right there, by the way, that little tiny white thing right there. And it's like, what, 60... I guess this must be like 300 feet across or something. And you can see this, and here's one, and here, this is Silbury Hill? That's not how you say it, is it? Silbury Hill, yeah. This is a man-made mountain, the largest one in Europe. It's huge. And this is the one, the crop circle, that almost has the same base. This is different than the one you just saw, by the way. This is a different one. But they're massive, they're huge, and they're extremely complex. Now this one you're probably familiar with. It's interesting that the ones in 1998 are almost all patterns that come out of the Flower of Life. And it looks like whoever's doing it just went to a Flower of Life class or something. And they're almost always discovered by sacred sites, usually in conjunction with a sacred site somewhere in the world. And at any rate, I would really like to go into this more, into what all of this is, but I suggest that you study this very carefully. There are somewhere around 10,000 crop circles are now have occurred, and they are not just in England, they're all over the world. They're on little tiny islands out in the middle of nowhere. The United States gets a little over 200 crop circles a year, though our government erases them as fast as possible and doesn't want you to know about it, but they're here. I've seen crop circles in Holland. One year they had 136 there last year, and one of them was done in crusted snow, and it was an incredible complex of circles, of concentric rings and circles. Some of the circles were only 3/4 of an inch wide, half an inch wide, and they were 300 or 400 feet across with absolute perfection. And I can say one thing for sure: whoever did that crop circle or snow circle did not walk on the earth. They had to hover. For sure. And they found a crop circle in Canada where it was done with trees, where the trees made a 45-degree angle and laid down on the ground. So I know nobody went around stamping those trees down. I suggest you investigate this more carefully, of what this is and what it really means. I do have a video out called The Story of England, which goes into this in great detail of what we believe is really going on and who it is and how they're doing this. And one last little thing, there's a video out of these two spheres of light that go around and forms a crop circle in a matter of seconds. How many have seen that video? It's not real. It's a fake. And unfortunately it is. But that is the idea that many people have seen these spheres of light come in and the crop circles form in a matter of just absolute seconds, 5-6 seconds, it's there. But the crop circle was formed by computer images, and they made one mistake. They gave a whole story of when it happened, and the sun angle was not aligned up with that time that they said it happened by 5 hours, and so they lied. And unfortunately, there's a lot of lying going on around this kind of stuff, but there's also a lot of truth hidden in it. And so I recommend that you check it out and find out what it really means. That's been going on for 27 years. It is not getting slowing down whatsoever, and in fact, it's becoming more intense and more complex. And they have investigated these things with mathematically. This one's very interesting, of 13 circles forming the tube torus, which is one of the patterns used in the Flower of Life also. But when they've taken these crop circles and they've very carefully analyzed them, this was a crop circle, they have come up with very complex mathematical information that is making it very clear that whoever is doing this is brilliant. In fact, this one here really rocked the world. This is a drawing of one, this very complex one. There's a bend in this line here that precisely and mathematically delineates that this is speaking about hyperdimensional space. And we are just barely able to understand the mathematics of what they're talking about, whoever it is. Maybe it's Doug and Dave, but those guys are really brilliant. Because can you imagine making a crop circle like this in the dark, overnight, with two people, it's about 500 feet across, with this kind of precision, and to have this kind of knowledge in there? I don't think so. And I'm just stating, look at this more carefully and find out what it is and what they're talking about and why are they doing it, whoever it is. And if you want to see the story of England, I'll give you my impression of who I think it is. Now I'm going to talk about the third phenomena that's occurring, and this one is relatively new. It's only been out for 5 years or so. And probably by now most of you have heard about this one. And there's a raging controversy over this, whether it's true or not true. And I'm going to just give you my 2 cents on all of this, of what if it's true or not true. But if it is true, it is a further indication that there is something going on on this world of a level that no one has ever seen before. There's a book called The Bible Code, written by Michael Dresden. How many people have heard of this? That was about a third. That's a higher level. I've been checking audiences, and it was about 10%, now 15, 20. It's going up. It's on the New York bestseller list. What are they talking about? They've discovered a long time ago in the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible. Let me put it another way. In the Torah, in 6 different places, it's written that there's a secret book hidden inside the Bible. And that book would not be opened up until the end of time. It states it 6 times. And about 50 years ago, there was a rabbi in Israel, or I don't know if he was in Israel. I don't know if was Israel even there 50 years ago? Somewhere. Who was studying the Torah and discovered that if you took every 50th letter starting from the first letter of the Torah, in each of the 5 books, that something happened. In the first 2 books of the Torah, Genesis and the next one, I don't remember the names of them all, it wrote the word Torah. You took every 50th letter. And then if you went through book 4 and 5, it did the same thing, only it wrote the word Torah backwards. And then if you took the middle book in the center, so you have a reflection toward the center, it wrote the word in the name of God. And that person believed that there was a code in the Bible that based on the spacing of letters. And he tried and tried and tried, but it was way too complex because we had to wait until there were computers. And then there was a man named Dr. Eli Rips at the Hebrew University who decided, well, this is a very simple program, let's just do it. And they made the software program, plugged it in, and started putting words in there to see if there was any kind of truth to any of this. And it became amazing, actually. One of the things they did at one point, and it depends if you talk to this book, Michael Dresden, or the newer one that just came out called Cracking the Bible Code by Jeffrey Satinover, one of the things they did is they put the names of rabbis into the Bible code to see if they were written in there. And Michael said it was 30-something, but this person who was closer to it all said it was more like 60. So they put somewhere between 30 and 60 people's names, and they knew everything about these rabbis because they were dead. They knew when they were born, what they did in their lives and everything, and they plugged their names in, which completely rearranges the Bible, the 300,000 plus letters of the Torah, into a new matrix, which is kind of the way, I'm going to go back to this other one. Down here you can see all the letters, I don't know if you can see it, but they're in rows. And it forms names kind of like in a crossword puzzle that run across like this or at diagonals. And he put their names in there, and bang, there were their names exactly as they were spelled. And off to the left was the exact day they were born and the exact place they were born. And on the other side was the exact day they died and the exact place they died. And it was true of all 60 of them. They now can't find a single person in the world that's not in the Bible, which is including you. Your name's written in there, when you were born and when you will die. And everything about your life. It's all written in there. It's all determined. And not just people, but everything. And even things that are not on the surface of the earth. Like the comets that went in and hit Jupiter a few years ago. All that was written in the Bible and recorded in there. And it goes on and on and on. Now, obviously, this is a big deal if it's true. I mean, it means that this future is already written into the Bible. And then the big question over what does free will mean? And if it's already there, then what the heck? Let's go have a party. What does that mean? And so big questions started emerging. Well, first of all, the mathematicians of the world said, no way. This can't be true. This has just got to be BS. And so Yale and Harvard